Hello and welcome to this first look exploring session, our first session looking at The Phoenix by Thomas Middleton, a play performed in the early 17th century for the children of Paul's. And yes, this is, though we have done Thomas Middleton before, in fact we've done pretty much the end of his career and occasional bits in between, this is our first extant play that we can confidently say is by him, from his oeuvre, as it were. There's other bits of writing, what he's writing around about now, but we're going to start really getting deep into the world of Thomas Middleton over the next few years as his output progresses at some pace, both individually and collaboratively. So it's sort of exciting. This is our beginning with some baby Middleton. I'm not sure how old he is at this time. I suspect he's not really a baby. But anyway, we are going to explore the first 6 scenes or so of the play. And reading today, Niece, First Soldier and Tangle is...
Sarah Blake, actor, writer and director based in Germany.
Reading Fidelio, Second Soldier and Second Suitor is...
I am Greg and I'm in Beauchamp.
Reading Phoenix, Latronello and First Gentleman is...
Lynsey Beauchamp, actor in Kirkcaldy, Scotland.
Reading Proditor, Servant, Groom and Knight is...
Lynn Freitas, college composition teacher in the Northwestern United States.
And Scooter, of course. Reading Duke, Castiza, a jeweler's wife, and Furtivo is...
Lois, a retired academic in London.
Reading Lussurioso, third soldier, first suitor, and boy is...
Hello, that's me. I'm Eric. I'm here. I have coffee.
And reading Infesto, Captain, and Falso is...
Alan in Suffolk.
And I'm your host, Robert Crighton. I will be reading stage directions, some of them inferred, some of them original, and generally keeping everything moving forward in our version of the text. There are no act divisions. I have seen versions which have act divisions, but we're just going with individual scene numbers as a running total. So, without further ado, there is no recorded prologue. There isn't to say there wasn't one at the time, but there isn't one that survives to us. We just go bang into the action. Scene 1. Enter the old Duke of Ferrara nobles, Proditor, Lussurioso, and Infesto with attendants.
My lords, know that we, far from any natural pride or touch of temporal sway, have seen our face in our grave council's foreheads, where doth stand our truest glass, made by time's wrinkled hand. We know we're old. My days proclaim me so. 45 years I've gently ruled this dukedom. Pray heaven it be no fault, for there's as much disease, though not to the eye, in too much pity as in tyranny.
Your Grace hath spoke it right.
I know that life has not long course in me. 'Twill not be long before I show that kings have mortal bodies as well as subjects. Therefore, to my comfort and your successful hopes, I have a son whom I dare boast of.
Whom we all do boast of, a prince elder in virtues than in years.
His judgment is a father to his youth.
Aye, would he were from court.
Our largest hopes grow in him.
And 'tis the greatest pity, noble lord, he is untravelled.
'Tis indeed, my lord.
Had he but travel to his time in virtue, oh, he should now return again.
It shall be so. What is in hope begun, experience quickens. Travel confirms the man, who else lives doubtful and his days oft sorry, who's rich in knowledge has the stock of glory.
Most true, my royal lord.
Someone attend our son.
Enter the Prince Phoenix, attended by Fidelio.
See, here he comes, my lord.
Oh, you come well.
'Tis always my desire, my worthy father.
Your serious studies and those fruitful hours that grow up into judgment well become your birth and all our loves. I weep that you are my son, but virtuously I weep, the more my gladness. We have thought good and meet, by the consent of these our nobles, to move you towards travel, the better to approve you to yourself, and give your apter power foundation. To see affections actually presented, e'en by those men that owe them, yields more profit, aye, more content, than singly to read of them, since love or fear make writers partial. The good and free example which you find in other countries, match it with your own, the ill to shame the ill, which will in time fully instruct you how to set in frame a kingdom all in pieces.
Honoured father, with care and duty I have listened to you. What you desire in me, it is obedience. I do obey in all. Knowing for right, experience is a kingdom's better sight.
We have a muted Proditor.
Oh, 'tis the very lustre of a prince. Travel, 'tis sweet and generous.
He that knows how to obey knows how to reign, and that true knowledge have we found in you. Make choice of your attendants.
There soon chose only this man, my lord, a loving servant of mine.
What? None but he?
I do entreat no more, for that's the benefit of a private gentleman enjoys beyond our state, when he notes all, himself unnoted. For should I bear the fashion of a prince, I should then win more flattery than profit, and I should give them time and warning then to hide their actions from me. If I appear a son, they'll run into the shade with their ill deeds, and so prevent me.
A little too wise to live long.
You have answered us with wisdom. Let it be. Things private are best known through privacy.
And exeunt everybody apart from Phoenix and Fidelio. But we'll just briefly pause there, just to say, this is the opening of a play. We've got a duke, we've got son, we've got some people doing asides. For those following along home, they were nicely done asides. We do get the impression that yes, there's not everybody's. There might be some rumblings in the background of what is, on the surface, quite a very reasonable scene. Thoughts about this little intro to the play? Anyone got any thoughts? I mean, it's early. I know it's early. I stopped us quickly. That first impression, what we're taking in as an audience.
There's no mention of Phoenix's mother, the Duke's wife, as far as I can tell so far. Mm-hmm. Just a note. No information there. So
No. It's Eric, then Lynn.
I kind of like the whole sort of I love you, but you have to get out of the house. Like you study, we know you're good at your academic things, but like sort of you have to go and know the world in a different way aside from books, which is kind of I guess it's kind of what gentlemen did back then.
Oh yeah.
Very, very fashionable for the time back then.
Yeah.
So a gap year.
Yeah, I mean we still have gap years, so and I think it's none of this is unreasonable behaviour. It's strange for a play, I'm expecting unreasonable demands from the off. Lynn.
So Lynsey's comment made me think at that the fact that there seems to be no duchess, and the fact that the Duke has been ruling for for 40 years, 45, he says. That tells us that there's an heir, but there's no spare, and there's very little chance of there being a spare. So it raises the stakes a little bit.
Yeah. Any other thoughts from this situation so far? Okay. Well, let's dive in. Let's get, because we've got what's essentially a public scene. Private thoughts have been sent to us by asides from some of the minor characters, but it's all been very public face. Let's see what happens when we have a scene with just Phoenix and Fidelio as everybody exits.
Stay you, my elected servant.
My kind lord.
The Duke, my father, has a heavy burden of years upon him.
My lord, it seems so, for they make him stoop.
Without dissemblance, he is deep in age. He bows unto his grave. I wonder much which of his wild nobility it should be, for none of his sad council has a voice in't, should so far travel into his consent to set me over into other kingdoms upon the stroke and minute of his death.
My lord, 'tis easier to suspect them all than truly to name one.
Since it is thus, by absence I'll obey the Duke my father, and yet not wrong myself.
Therein, my lord, you might be happy twice.
So it shall be. I'll stay at home and travel.
Would your grace could make that good?
I can. And indeed, a prince need not travel farther than his own kingdom, if he apply himself faithfully, worthy the glory of himself and expectation of others. And it would appear far nobler industry in him to reform those fashions that are already in his country, than to bring new ones in which have neither true form nor fashion, to make his court an owl, city an ape, and the country a wolf preying upon the ridiculous pride of either. And therefore I hold it a safer stern upon this lucky advantage, since my father is near his setting, and I upon the eastern hill to take my rise, to look into the heart and bowels of this dukedom, and in disguise mark all abuses ready for reformation or punishment.
Give me but leave unfeignedly to admire you. Your wisdom is so spacious and so honest.
So much have the complaints and suits of men 7, nay 17 years neglected, still interposed by coin and great enemies, prevailed with my pity, that I cannot otherwise think but there are infectious dealings to most officers, and foul mysteries throughout all professions. And therefore I nothing doubt but to find travel enough within myself, and experience I fear too much. Nor will I be curious to fit my body to the humblest form and bearing, so the labour may be fruitful. For how can abuses that keep low come to the right view of a prince, unless his looks lie level with them, which else will be longest hid from him? He shall be the last man sees them. For oft between king's eyes and subjects stands there a bar of bribes. The under office flatters him next above it, he the next, and so of most or many. Every abuse will choose a brother. 'Tis through the world, this hand will rub the other.
You have set down the world briefly, my lord.
But how am I assured of faith in thee? Yet I durst trust thee.
Let my soul be lost when it shall loose your secrets. Nor will I only be a preserver of them, but if you so please, an assister.
It suffices. That king stands surest who by his virtues rises more than by birth or blood. That prince is rare who strives in youth to save his age from care. Let's be prepared. Away.
I'll follow your grace.
Exit Phoenix.
Thou wonder of all princes, president and glory, true Phoenix, made of an unusual strain, who labours to reform is fit to reign. How can that king be safe that studies not the profit of his people? See, here comes the best part of my heart, my love.
Enter Niece.
Sir, I am bound to find you. I heard newly of sudden travel which his grace intends, and only but yourself to accompany him.
You heard in that little beside the truth, yet not so sudden as to want his manners to leave you unregarded.
I did not think so unfashionably of you. How long is your return?
'Tis not yet come to me, scarce to my lord, unless the duke refer it to his pleasure. But long I think it is not. Duke's age, if not his apt experience, will forbid it.
His grace commands. I must not think amiss. Farewell.
Nay, stay and take this comfort. You shall hear often from us. I'll direct where you shall surely know, and I desire you write me the truth. How my new father-in-law, the captain, bears himself toward my mother. For that marriage knew nothing of my mind. It never flourished in any part of my affection.
Methinks she's much disgraced herself.
Nothing so, if he be good and will abide the touch. A captain may marry a lady if he can sail into her good will.
Indeed, that's all.
'Tis all in all. Commend me to thy breast. Farewell.
Exit Nice.
So by my lord's firm policy we may see, to present view, what absent forms would be.
And exit. So yeah, now that we've got to the end of the scene, this is throwing up all sorts of interesting party quirks. It's no spoiler to say that Middleton has an interesting approach to nominative determinism, either by having characters whose names do sort of state quite explicitly things about their character, or by not giving their characters names at all because they are functions of the plot. And so we have Nice here, who is not given a name, but we also have characters like Fidelio, who I suspect is going to be moderately trustworthy, and people earlier in the court who have Infesto, just suggest not someone you want to be inviting round and trusting. And I do like Fidelio's line when they're talking about, who could be setting us up to leave the kingdom when our father's dying? And it's going, my lord, 'tis easier to suspect them all than truly to name one. I think, this now we're into a private scene. We suddenly get this court is slipperier than we had hints of that with the asides earlier, but we're really getting a sense of these people know what this world is like. They might not know what the outer world is like, hence the disguise plot. But yeah, thoughts in the room. I've been rabbiting on. There must be other thoughts. Eric.
I'm just confused about the sudden mention of the captain and sort of Fidelio's mother. Sort of like, what? But then sort of, I'm just confused about that. It's like setting up stuff that's going to happen or is about to happen, but not quite. So it's this kind of characters we've not met yet, and it's like an interesting device to see in a play from this time period.
Lois.
Yeah. It just seems to me to be here comes the subplot, and a rather unskillful introduction of it. The subplot sounds to me like an autobiographical one, because I know that Middleton's mother married again after her husband's death, and it was an absolute disaster. So I don't know if we're going to find out the same thing here. This could be interesting.
Yes, there was an awful lot of litigation, as I recall,
Yes, I
and bantering between the two parties there.
Yeah.
So it was not a happy time. Lynsey.
Yeah, I don't know whether to hope or despair about the rest of the play, because it feels so clearly set up that Phoenix is going to go in disguise. He's going to mix amongst the people. He's going to find out all sorts of things that he suspected. Already we know he suspects that everybody's bribing each other and in cahoots and, just corrupt, basically. And so I'm really hoping that the plot isn't just an exposition of that basic idea. If it isn't, then that would be great, because this I think would make the play a lot more interesting. But at the moment, I sort of feel, are we just going to get a rehearsal of what Phoenix has said in the first scene? So, Donald.
Hopes, fears, and dreams from the room there. Other thoughts before we dive into, as Lois said, the arrival of the subplot. We have had a number of plays where, broadly speaking, the end of the previous scene, someone mentions in passing that the next scene is coming on any second now. So it's not actually that unusual. Eric.
Yeah, when was this play written again? Because I'm just intrigued by the "who labors to reform is fit to reign," which sounds a bit like sort of flattery towards the ruling monarch.
it really sits on a nexus between Elizabeth and James, very late Elizabeth. 1603, 1604 is approximately the date, though even the 1604 date is technically still 1603 by the old calendar anyway, because I'm pedantic that way. But there's a reasonable date. I think it doesn't get printed till 1607. I think so. It's prior to that, and I think it's the latter end of Elizabeth, which may chime with a duke coming on saying he's been on the throne for 40 years. But obviously, this duke has a son, so that's it. I think we should be a bit careful of too elaborate parallels that may or may not be going on. But yeah, we really are milking now the last things we can just about call Elizabethan drama, just by possibly weeks. Okay, let's go into scene 2. Let's find out what else is happening in this world. Scene 2: enter the captain with soldiers following. Oh, soldiering fellows. Sorry, I misread that. Soldiering fellows.
There's noble purchase, Captain.
Nay, admirable purchase.
Enough to make us proud forever.
Huh?
Never was opportunity so gallant.
Why, you make me mad.
3 ships, not a poop less.
And everyone so wealthily burdened upon my manhood.
Ox on it. Now I'm tidying this a devil will have it.
Captain, of all men living, I would have sworn thou wouldst ne'er have married.
So would I myself, man. Give me my due. You know I've sworn all heaven over and over.
That you have, in faith.
I go too, then.
Of a man that has tasted salt water to commit such a fresh trick.
Why, 'tis abominable, I grant you. Now I see it.
Had there been fewer women,
And among those women, fewer drabs.
And among those women, among those drabs, fewer pleasing.
Then 'tad been something.
but when there are more women, more common, pretty sweethearts than ever any age could boast of.
And I to play the artificer and marry? To have my wife dance at home, my ship at sea, and both take in salt water together? Oh, Lieutenant, thou art happy. Thou keep'st a wench.
I hope I am happier than so, Captain, for on my troth, she keeps me.
How? Is there any such fortunate man breathing? And I so miserable to live honest? I envy thee, Lieutenant. I envy that thou art such a happy knave. Here's my hand among you. Share it equally. I'll to sea with you.
There spoke a noble captain.
Let's hear from you. There'll be news shortly.
Doubt it not, Captain.
And everyone exits apart from that captain.
What lustful passion came aboard of me that I should marry? Was I drunk? Yeah, that cannot altogether hold, for it's 4 o'clock in the morning. Had it been 5, I would have sworn it. But a man is in danger of it to be cast away without he have an extraordinary pilot that can perform more than a man can do. And to say truth too, when I'm abroad, what can I do at home? No man living can reach so far. And what a horrible thing 'twould be to have horns brought me at sea, to look as if the devil were in the ship. And all the great tempests will be thought of as my raising, to be the general curse of all merchants. And yet they likely are as deep in myself, and that's a comfort. Oh, that a captain should live to be married! Nay, I that have been such a gallant salt thief should live to be married? What a fortunate elder brother is he, whose father, being a rammish ploughman, himself a perfumed gentleman, spending the labouring reek from his father's nostrils in tobacco, the sweat of his father's body in monthly physic for his pretty queasy harlot, he shows a pace in the country. Tailor takes him in the city, so that oftentimes before the corn comes to earing, he's up to the ears in high collars. And so at every harvest, the reapers take pains for the mercers. Ah! Why, this is stirring happiness indeed. Would my father had held a plough so, and fed upon squeezed curds and onions, that I might have bathed in sensuality. But he was too rubbish himself to let me thrive under him. Consumed me before he got me, and that makes me so wretched now to be shackled with a wife, and not greatly rich neither.
Enter his lady, Castiza.
Captain, my husband.
Slife, call me husband again, and I'll play the captain and beat you.
Oh, what has disturbed you, sir, that you now look so like an enemy upon me?
Go make a widower, hang thyself.
How comes it that you are so opposite to love and kindness? I deserve more respect, but that you please to be forgetful of it. For love to you did I neglect my state, chide better fortunes from me, gave the world talk, laid all my friends at waste.
More fool you. Do you like none but me? Could none but I supply you? Sure you were sued by far worthier men, deeper in wealth and gentry. What couldst thou see in me to make thee dote so on me? If I know I am a villain, what a torment's this? Why did you marry me? You think, as most of your insatiate widows, the captains can do wonders when, thus, the name doth often prove the better man.
That which you urge should rather give me cause to repent than yourself.
Then to that end, I do it.
What a miserable state am I led into.
Enter servant.
How now, sir?
Count Proditor is now alighted.
My lord, I must make much of him. He'll one day write me cuckold. 'Tis good to make much of such a man. Into my face he plies it hard. I thank him.
Enter Proditor.
What, my worthy lord?
I'll come to you in order, Captain.
Oh, and kisses the lady.
Ah, that's in order. Kiss is a gamut to prick song.
Let me salute you, Captain.
And exit lady.
My dear esteemed Count, I have a life for you.
Hear you the news?
What may it be, my lord?
My lord, the Duke's son is upon his travel to several kingdoms.
May it be possible, my lord, and yet so little rumoured?
Take it of my truth. Nay, 'twas well managed. Things are as they are handled, but all my care is still, pray heaven he return, safe, without danger, Captain.
Why, is there any doubt to be had of that, my lord?
Ay, by my faith, Captain, princes have private enemies, and great. Put case a man should grudge him for his virtues, or envy him for his wisdom. Why, you know, this makes him lie bare-breasted to his foe.
That's full of certainty, my lord. But who be his attendants?
Thence, Captain, come the fear, but singly attended neither. And my best gladness, only by your son-in-law, Fidelio.
Is it to be believed? Promise you, my lord, then I begin to fear him myself. That fellow will undo him. I durst undertake him to corrupt him with 12pence over and above. That's a small matter. As a whorish conscience, he's an inseparable knave. I could ne'er speak well of that fella.
All we of the younger house, I can tell you, do doubt him much. The lady's removed. Shall we have your sweet society, Captain?
Though it be in mine own house, I desire I may follow your lordship.
I love to avoid strife. Not many months from Phoenix shall keep his life.
Exit Proditor, leaving the captain behind.
So his way is in. He knows it. We must not be uncourteous to a lord. Warn him our house. 'Twere wild. His presence is an honour. He lie with our wives. 'Tis for our credit. We shall be the better trusted. 'Tis a sign we shall live in the world. Oh, tempests and whirlwinds! Who but that man who the forefinger cannot daunt, that makes his shame his living? Who but that man, I say, could endure to be thoroughly married? Nothing but a divorce can relieve me. Any way to be rid of her would rid my torment. If all means fall, I'll kill or poison her, and purge my fault at sea. But first I'll make gentle try of a divorce. But how shall I accuse her subtle honesty? I'll attach this lord's coming to her, take hold of that, ask counsel, and now I remember, I have acquaintance with an old crafty client, who by the puzzle of suits and shifting of courts has more tricks and starting holes than a dizzy bait of 15 attorneys. One that has been muzzled in law like a bear and led by the ring of his spectacles from office to office. Him I'll seek out with haste, all paths I'll tread, all deaths I'll die, ere I die married.
And exit. So I think it would be fair to say that neither party is exactly happy with the arrangement. I think it would be fair to say that they're not best suited. Yes, the captain's not a great guy in various ways. And we get these sort of interrelations with the court as well. So Proditor coming on and doing evil asides again. He likes his evil asides, doesn't he? Like just every so often just turning to the audience and going, yes, the Phoenix must die. Yeah. I think some moustache may need twirling. We haven't talked about genre, of course, and there's nothing noted on this as to, and I'm not going to invite additional data on whether the text gives you more data on that, because we don't know where it's going. This could all end in horrible death and murder. It could all end with happy marriage at the end. And actually, so far, the play isn't really precisely telling us which way it's going to swing, which is quite nice. The fact that we don't have on the opening of our text, at least, something telling us where it's going. I quite like that. Alan?
One thing that puzzled me slightly was the opening entrance of that scene is the captain with three soldierly fellows, and yet it becomes fairly clear that he's actually a naval captain rather than an army captain.
Tell it to the Marines.
Well, if it had been Sailor 1, Sailor 2, Sailor 3, it might have made more sense.
Yeah, I don't know what the context of the way this particular armed forces is integrated. Whether that's a tweak we might clarify in performance, or whether it matters a damn. I don't know. Lois, then Lynn, possibly. I don't know. Are you waving? No.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, soldierly fellow seems to me, vaguely military-looking people, which is probably about right. In other words, not sailors specifically, but people that could be aboard a ship, I suppose, if it was a warship. This is looking more and more like Middleton's autobiography, actually, because his father-in-law, I think, had been a member, I think, in the Virginia Company, and I think had actually sailed to the New World. So, not good. Also,
yes, if it is autobiography, I mean that man might want to sue because he's not painting a very nice portrait of this guy.
Yeah, well, I think his father-in-law did more or less bankrupt his wife, and pretty much ruined Middleton's hopes of any kind of fortune. So he had every reason to be getting at him here. That's because that must be one reason why the captain has nothing good to say about Fidelio. I mean, if he really is the way he's described, then this is a case of a name not telling you the truth. But I would imagine he's just lying through his teeth.
I mean, normally I'd be a little resistant to biographical readings, but it is sort of leaping out at us, isn't it? It's sort of hitting us in the face and going, look, it's me. I'm Fidelio, yes. And so's my wife. It's doing a lot of interesting setup here. These two scenes are setting up two quite well developed. This doesn't feel like this captain thing is something that's going to peter out. It does feel like this is a plot line that is going to be really played with. So it'll be interesting to see how the court is, and the two worlds are interlinked. The court pops over and says, "Hi, are you into some potential weird court action, my friend over here?" All sorts of possible crossovers. Other thoughts before we move into scene 3? We've only done 2 scenes. Good grief. Eric.
What I find interesting is the captain's last speech about sort of like how else aside from trying to get rid of his wife, sort of like how it's if I'm cheated on, cuckolded, whatever, it brings me honor. I should think of it as like something honorable, which is kind of the complete opposite of basically what he's trying to do, and what Proditor is trying to do as well. And yeah, this is an interesting speech.
There's an awful lot of sectional innuendo in this scene. I mean, I don't know how many of those lines landed for people listening to it, but anything to do with salty liquid, I think we can take is sexual and things like that. There's an awful lot of that bouncing around here, and also how certain lines, how ironically are they to be played, and how much are they stating actual intent. So there's a lot to play with here, actually, in terms of how you represent what is actually happening in this scene, I think. Alan?
I also seem to have got this one again of a playwright having a good go at the lawyers. I don't know that we got a history of dealing with dodgy lawyers.
Well, I say that a lot of litigation definitely went down. If we're going down the biographical route to look at this text, Middleton and his family, lawyers were hired, and he's been about a fair number of them. Also, what we should note for the listeners, viewers at home, is the way the text does dance between verse and prose. We do have quite extensive chunks of prose, and it's not just the captain speaks in prose. No, the captain does do a bit of verse, and depending on scenes, also Phoenix dives into prose when he needs to do some exposition. But and I don't know if there's a pattern specifically to that, or whether that's just it just plays around. Okay, any other thoughts? We have a very short scene coming up. Scene 3, enter Proditor with the lady Castiza.
Oh, you resist me hardly.
I beseech your lordship, cease in this. 'Tis never to be granted. If you come as a friend unto my honour and my husband, you shall be ever welcome. If not, I must entreat it.
Why, assure yourself, 'tis not the fashion.
'Tis more my grief, my lord. Such as myself are judged the worse for such.
Faith, you're too nice. You'll see me kindly forth?
And honourably welcome.
And exeunt. Yeah, nothing worse than your new husband's business associates turning up and being a bit fresh. And yeah, there's toxic masculinity popping through the door there. But evil character, so or clearly not a great person. So just this little scene. I mean, you could almost argue that's effectively a continuation of the previous scene that they just nipped off and come straight back on again. Any additional thoughts on that? It's not a complicated scene. No. Okay, then we will dive straight into scene 4. Lynsey can put her hat back on. For we have disguise as scene 4. Enter a groom before Phoenix and Fidelio in disguise, and they are lighted into an inn.
Gentlemen, you're most neatly welcome.
You're very cleanly, sir. Prithee have a care to our geldings.
Your geldings shall be well considered.
Considered?
Sirrah, what guests does this inn hold now?
Oh, some 25 gentlemen, besides their beasts.
Their beasts?
Arrow wenches, I mean, sir, for your worship knows that those that are under men are beasts.
How does your mother, sir?
Very well in health, I thank you heartily, sir.
And so is my Mary, faith.
I'll do her commendations, indeed, sir.
Well kept up, shuttlecock.
But what old fellow was he that newly alighted before us?
Oh, he, as errant a crafty fellow as e'er made water on horseback. Some say he's as good as a lawyer. Marry, I'm sure he's as bad as a knave. If you have any suits in the law, he's the fittest man for your company. He's been so towed and lugged himself that he's able to afford you more knavish counsel for 10 groats than another for 10 shillings.
A fine fellow. But do you know him to be a knave and will lodge him?
Your worship begins to talk idly. Your bed shall be made presently. If we should not lodge knaves, I wonder how we should be able to live honestly. Are there honest men enough, think you, in the term time to fill the inns of the town? And as far as I can see, a knave's gelding eats no more hay than an honest man's. Nay, a thief's gelding eats less, I'll stand to it. His master allows him a better ordinary. Yet I have my eightpence, day and night. 'Twere more for our profit I was. You were all thieves. If you were so contented, I shall be called for. Give your worship good morrow.
And exit Groom.
A royal knave, i' faith, we have happened into a godly inn.
Assure you, my lord, they all belong to one church.
This should be some old busy turbulent fellow, villainous law-worn that eats holes into poor men's causes.
And enter Tangle with 2 suitors and the groom.
May it please your worship to give me leave.
I give you leave, sir. You have your venium. Now, fill me a brown toast, sirrah. Toast, sirrah? Groom?
Yes, the groom returned.
Sorry. Now I've lost my place. Will you have no drink to it, sir?
Is that a question in law?
Yes, in a lowest court in the cellar, sir.
Let me have removed presently, sir.
It shall be done, sir.
Exit Groom.
Now, as you were saying, sir, I'll come to you immediately too.
Oh, very well, sir.
I'm a little busy, sir.
But as how, sir?
I pray, sir?
He's brought me into the court. My adversary has not declared it.
Non declaravit adversarius, sayest thou. Oh, what a villain's that! I have a trick to do thee good. I will get thee out a proxy and make him declare with a pox to him.
That will make him declare to his sore grief. I thank your good worship, but put case he do declare.
See declaracet, if he should declare there.
I would be loath to stand out to the judgment of that court.
Non ad judicium. Do you fear corruption? I'll relieve you again. You shall get a supersedius non molestandum and remove it higher.
Very good.
Now, if it should come ever to a testificandum, what be his witness?
I little fear his witnesses.
Non metuis testes. More valiant man than Orestes.
Please you, sir, to dissolve this into wine, ale, or beer. I come 100 mile to you, I protest, and leave all other counsel behind me.
Nay, you shall always find me a sound card. I stood not at the pillory for nothing in 88. All the world knows that. Now, let me dispatch you, sir. I come to you, presenter.
Say if the party have removed both body and claws with the habeas corpus.
Has he that knavery? But has he put in bail above, canst tell?
That I can assure your worship he has not.
Why, then thy best course shall be to lay out more money, take out a precedendo, and bring down the cause and him with a vengeance.
Then he will come indeed.
As for the other party, let the auditor Caroulla alone. Take me out a special supplicavit, which will cost you enough, and then you pepper him. For the first party, after the procedendo, you'll get costs. The cause being found, you'll have a judgment. A nunc pro tunc, you'll get a venera facius to warn your jury, a decim tales to fill up the number, and a capius ut legatum for your execution.
I thank you, my learned counsel.
What a busy caterpillar's this. Let's accost him in that manner.
Content, my lord.
Oh, my old admirable fellow, how have I all this while thirsted to salute thee? I knew thee in octavo of the Duke.
In octavo of the Duke? I remember the year well.
By the mass, a lusty proper man.
Oh, was I?
but still in law.
Still in law? I had not breathed else now. 'Tis very very manner to me to be in law. I'd be dead ere this else. I have found such sweet pleasure in the vexation of others that I could wish my years over and over again to see that fellow a beggar, that bawling knave a gentleman, the matter brought e'en to a judgment today, as far as 'twas to begin again tomorrow. Oh, raptures! Here a writ of demure, there a procedendo, here a susurrara, there a capiendo, tricks, delays, money laws.
Is it possible, old lad?
I have been a term trotter myself any time this 45 years. A goodly time and gracious, in which space I have been at least 16 times beggared, and got up again, and in the mire again, that I have stuck again, and yet got up again.
And so clean and handsome now.
You see it about I cannot hide it from you. Nay, more, in filici horror be it spoken, you see in me old, yet have I at this present 29 suits in law.
Deliver us, man.
And all not worth 40 shillings.
May it be believed.
The pleasure of a man is all.
An old fellow and such a stinger.
A stake pulled out of my hedge, there's one. I was well beaten, I remember, that's 2. I took one a bed with my wife again her will, that's 3. I was called cuckold for my labour, that's 4. I took a bed again, that's 5. Then one called me whittle, that's 6. He killed my dog for barking, 7. My maidservant was knocked at that time, 8. My wife miscarried with a push, 9. And sic de ceteris, I have so vexed and beggared the whole parish with process, subpoenas, and such like molestations. They are not able to spare so much ready money from a term as would set up a new weathercock. The churchwardens are fain to go to law with the poor's money.
Fie.
So I fetch up all the men every turn time that 'tis impossible to be at civil cuckoldry within ourselves, unless the whole country rise upon our wives.
Oh, my faith, a pretty policy.
Nay, an excellent stratagem. But of all, I most wonder at the continual substance of thy wit, that, having had so many suits in law from time to time, thou hast still money to relieve them.
He's the best fortune for that. I never knew him without.
Why, do you so much wonder at that? Why, this is my course. My mare and I come up some 5 days before a term.
A good decorum.
Here I lodge, as you see, amongst inns and places of most receipt.
Very wittily.
By which advantage I dive into countrymen's causes, furnish them with knavish counsel, little to their profit, buzzing into their ears this course, that writ, this office, that ultimum refugium. As you know, I have words enow for the purpose.
In conscience, i' faith.
Yeah, now in law, no matter for conscience, for which busy and laborious sweating courtesy they cannot choose but feed me with money, by which I maintain mine own suits.
Why, let me hug thee, caper in mine arms.
Another special trick I have, nobody must know it, which is to prefer most of those men to one attorney, whom I affect best, to answer which kindness of mine he will sweat the better in my cause and do them the less good. Take my word, I helped my attorney to more clients the last term than he will dispatch all his lifetime. I did it.
What a noble, memorable deed was there.
And there we'll pause. So we have this rather excellent character study brought on, and Tangle's legal dealings is, again, we're in nominative determinism land, because what is his basic recourse is to tangle everyone in as many suits and countersuits and stoppages and appeals to higher powers. It's sort of a lot of that's tangled in the Latin, but the actual what his basic practice seems to be is actually relatively simple. Is just keep the lawsuit ticking over so that Hugh can keep pocketing the fees. I think again we can possibly be going biographically here that Middleton is sick of paying people money, or at least his family is sick to death of paying lawyers money, because all they want to do is keep the suit going so that they can keep pocketing the fees. We're also really diving into the world outside the court. After that first scene, I don't think this play's very interested in the court. At court, I could be wrong about this, but we're into this world of these the captain and the soldiers. And now we're into this groom who's doing as many. This is an establishment for very specific uses, sir. You do not appear to know what is about in this house, with lots of innuendos being thrown around. This is the dodgy part of town that Phoenix and Fidelio have wandered into. So it's an interesting question, because Lynsey was talking about earlier about where you thought this was going to go, and it seems to be more opening Phoenix's eyes to the world around him. Seems to be what this is in part doing. Someone's just put in the chat, I see the word Dickensian. It does feel Dickensian, doesn't it? I mean, Sarah, you got to enjoy Tangle. It feels like it's just a part you can hand an actor and they will make money out of it, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, what you were saying earlier about the names being the characters. When I saw I was playing someone called Tangle, I thought, oh right, okay, is it him getting in a tangle, or is he tangling other people? And I had a look at the first few lines of dialogue and saw someone was calling him a busy caterpillar, and thought, oh right, okay, let's have a go at this then. And he just went off in a whole direction. It was really good fun. It really Dickensian. It was like something out of Bleak House. But I really didn't know a lot of the time what quite I was saying. And not just because of the Latin. The Latin, obviously, I didn't know, but I wasn't entirely sure what I was saying a lot of the time. But it didn't stop it being really good fun.
And I think gestures and things, if he's got props, this is this wrist here and there. I think that a certain amount of obfuscation and confusion is part of the patter. I just love the way he keeps going, sort of, I of course don't tell anyone this. And then I will tell you the thing that I don't tell anyone at great length. It's like, you're my best friend now. And, are they actually capering later? Because there's a line of where they talk about, like, caper with you or something like that. Do they do a little dance? It's like they've got really enthusiastic about this dodgy practice. I mean, it's not that he's necessarily doing dodgy law. He's not necessarily, he's not necessarily a criminal lawyer in the sense that he's a criminal lawyer. But he's definitely dishonest in the sense of how he's fleecing people, and of course funneling all of them to the same clerk, basically.
Right. Yeah.
Which I'm sure. Where's Helen when you need one? Helen would have so much fun with this. Anyway, so I've talked a lot. Alan, then Eric.
Yeah, I mean, Tangle's modus operandi is bullshit baffles brains. Keep talking, throw in a lot of obscure Latin, some of it which is out of context. And the punter, particularly if they're a country yokel, is going to be suitably impressed.
Because it's all sort of spurious, we'll take it to the appeals court, we'll take it to the higher, the high law lords kind of thing. When of course, these are tiny civil suits that shouldn't go anywhere and should be settled in 5 minutes. And it's like I'm not suggesting it's any way like a certain high placed political figure of recent years, and the way they deal with lawsuits coming in their general direction, but it feels oddly like that. By the time this goes out, this will be horribly out of date, and they're hopefully in prison. Anyway, Eric, then Lynn, then Lynsey.
What it reminded me of was a bit the basically the beginning of the scene where you've got sort of Phoenix and talking to the groom. Made me think of I think it was King Edward or King John, one of the kings anyway, who was chatting to the tanner, sort of the tanner going, "Oh yeah, the king's horrible. I mean, you know those royals, they're just messed up and that kind of thing." one of the Haywood plays that we did ages ago. And yeah, I think it was Edward something.
I think it was Edward the Fourth, parts 1 or 2.
Yes, one of those. And they went hunting. Anyway, yeah, that's what that reminded me of. And it was kind of, yeah, it was an interesting shift from that into like, oh, this guy's up to something. Let's see what he's doing.
Lynn.
Yeah, the lawyer is a fun character. Tangle's a great character, but actually, this play is doing a good job with characters in general. If you don't expect them to be too, complex, we have your evil mustache twirling, courtier. We have your, the captain is. I mean, he's a horrible person, but he's kind of a great heart. He's just kind of a horrible human being. You really know where you are if that card's been assigned to you. And Castiza, the mother, she's just very upright. She's just a very, her name is Chastity. She's a good person. And even like the groom, who's like, dude, it's like, if we only rented to honest people, we'd got a business. What are you thinking? So, like pretty much everyone has a little something to work with. So we know where we are with all these characters.
Lynsey. No.
I'm really sorry. I was just put my hand up to say I had to go and open the back door for the window cleaner. My window cleaner turns up at random and he just messaged to say he was here. So I had to go and open the door for him. So anyway, all done. Sorry.
That's all right. So yeah, I guess because I mean this isn't a play world that is very kind to women so far. There's a lot of background, but there's a question of this is the world the play is in. This is the world that these feels like these are characters you meet, but they're not necessarily that's what the play is pushing us towards yet. I mean, there's always still time for it to go horribly wrong. But let's not pretend that we haven't been into that kind of pub. Or that have met that kind of person in those kinds of establishments. Though I say, until we finish the play, we don't know what the matrix of the play is doing. Yes, Middleton is certainly possible of such things. Any other thoughts before we finish the scene? Because I paused I basically paused once I think Tangle had run out of steam. I say that. There's still quite a lot of scene to go, but I don't think Tangle dominates it. It's very much a big actor turn, isn't it? I mean, it really is. It's like, hi, this is your scene. Enjoy it. You may or may not get more. We shall see. Okay, so at the end of Tangle's oratorio, as it were, Phoenix has said how wonderful that deed was. Enter the groom again.
Sir.
Now, sir?
There's a kind of captain very robustious,ly inquires for you.
For me? A man of war? A man of law is fit for a man of war. We have no leisure to say prayers. We both kill on Sunday mornings. I'll not be long from your sweet company.
Oh, no, I beseech you.
Exit Tangle with Groom.
What captain might this be?
Thou angel sent among us sober law, made with meek eyes, persuading action, no loud immodest tongue, voiced like a virgin, as chaste from sale, save only to be heard, but not to rail. How has abuse deformed thee to all eyes? Yet where thy virtue sat, thy vices rise. Yet why so rashly for one villain's fault do I arraign whole man? Admired law, thy upper parts must need be sacred, pure, and incorruptible. They're grave and wise. 'Tis but the dross beneath 'em, and the clouds that get between thy glory and their praise, that make the visible and foul eclipse. For those that are near to thee are upright, as noble in their conscience as their birth. Know that damnation is in every bribe, and rarely put it from 'em. Rate the presenters, and scourge 'em with 5 years' imprisonment for offering but to tempt 'em. This is true justice, exercised and used. Woe to the giver when the bribe's refused. 'Tis not their will to have law worse than war, where still the poorest die first, to send a man without a sheet to his grave, or bury him in his papers. 'Tis not their mind it should be, nor to have a suit hang longer than a man in chains. Let him be ne'er so fastened. They least know that are above the tedious steps below. I thank my time, I do.
I long to know what captain this should be.
See where the bane of every cause returns.
Enter Tangle with Captain.
'Tis the captain, my father-in-law, my lord!
Take heed.
The divorce shall rest then, and 500 crowns shall stand in full force and virtue.
Then you do wisely, Captain.
Away shall I. Very well.
A lusty crack of wind go with thee.
But,
Huh?
remember, Scrivener?
I'll have him for thee.
Exit Captain.
Why, thus am I sought after by all professions. Here's a weather-beaten captain who, not long since new married to a lady widow, would now fain have sued a divorce between her and him, but that her honesty is his only hindrance, to be rid of which he does determine to turn her into white money, and there's a lord his chapman has bid 500 crowns for her already.
Ow.
Or for his part, or whole in her.
Why, does he mean to sell his wife?
His wife? Aye, by the mass, he would sell his soul if he knew what merchant would lay out money upon it, and some of them have need of one.
Why, I never heard the like.
Non audivisti dis.
Ooh, is that me or is that you?
Yes.
Babe
Sarah's
Kate.
frozen.
Oh, Sarah, you just froze there.
Oh.
Just start that speech again from the
Okay.
non
Non.
Odvisti.
Okay. Non audivisti didst ne'er hear of that trick? Why, Pistor, a baker, sold his wife t'other day to a cheesemonger that made cake and cheese, another to a cofferer, a third to a common player. Ah, you see, 'tis common. Ne'er fear, Captain, he has not so much wit to be a precedent himself. I promised to furnish him with an odd scrivener of mine own to draw the bargain and sale of his lady. Are your horses stored here, gentlemen?
Aye.
I shall be busily plunged till towards bedtime, above the chin in profundis.
And exit Tangle.
What monstrous days are these? Not only to be vicious, most men study, but in it to be ugly, strive to exceed each other in the most deformed deed.
Was this her private choice? Did she neglect the presence and opinion of her friends for this?
I wonder who that one should be, should so disgrace that reverend name of Lord so loathsomely to buy adultery.
We may make means to know.
Take courage, man, we'll beget some defence.
I am bound by nature.
I by conscience. To sell his lady. Indeed, she was a beast to marry him, and so he makes of her. Come, I'm thorough now, I'm entered.
And exeunt. So once again, it's helpful that Tangle has this sort of propensity to just tell people random things, as established earlier, because it's that element of just immediately coming on and saying, "Oh, that guy in the other room, who I don't know is related to you by marriage." I do love the way the Fidelio just going, "I wonder if it's the same captain." It is. It's the same. I really want to know who that and those little lines while Phoenix is doing his "Oh, I am such a noble person" speech, which I did like. I thought it was actually a very nice speech, and it does give you something to do. But it does also feel like it's detachable and could be used sort of elsewhere. Lynsey, how did you have thoughts on that speech?
Yeah, I do. I thought that was a very interesting piece of structure there, that he's got Fidelio saying, "Who's that captain?" And then Phoenix just goes into this sort of soliloquy about, oh my God, this, state of mankind and law and everything else. And then, as soon as he's come to a full stop, Fidelio says, I really, really want to know who that captain is. I just, it's very interesting what, maybe some kind of attempt or experiment of sort of keeping both plot lines alive along with, the sort of didactic aspect of the play. I mean, I just thought it was very interestingly done.
Yeah, because with a modern show, you'd have thumb spotlight do his moment, but in the context there, it feels like Fidelio just should be constantly wandering up to the door and just seeing if he can see while Phoenix is doing his speech. It feels like it's undercutting. It is sort of a freeze on stage while he does his speech. Fidelio isn't really listening to it, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's a very interesting thing. I just thought it seems so obviously wrong that I think it can't be accidental, but I don't know really.
Yeah, Eric.
I was gonna say that maybe it's the sort of opposite, where like Fidelio is trying to get to the door and Phoenix is just holding it back, and he goes, "Thou angel sent amongst us," kind of like pulling him back every time, because obviously, like, if you're working, well, I don't know if Q scripts are used by this point, but I'm guessing they were still used. They would have sort of he would be expecting an interruption, but if the other guy doesn't interrupt him, then he's either fallen asleep or trying to get to the door. So it might become the game of like sort of, to send a man without a sheet to his grave and like come back here and bury him in his papers and that kind of, I don't know, just back and forth. I don't know.
Alan.
I have a feeling, in fact, what's happening is Fidelio who keeps trying to sneak over to the door or to a thin bit of wall to try and overhear what's going on next door.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, it really depends on whether that's, as I say, an undercutting moment or whether he's just waiting for his master to stop speaking because, this is what he does. He's off on one. I'll just wait. Lynn.
Yeah, this is the scene where Fidelio realizes he's in a play. Because this kind of coincidence is typical of dramatic structure, really, much more than life. It also makes me think that this is at least structurally a comedy, because these kinds of plot entanglements and weird coincidences are more characteristic of comedy than they are of tragedy. So we'll see. I'm kind of hoping for comic resolution, although the captain and Castiza's marriage is really that's a problem.
Yeah, because of course the solution from the captain's point of view is to besmirch her name and it's not a nice maneuver. It's not like they've both sat down and gone, you know what, we're really not a good match, are we? Shall we get this annulled? He's doing this horrible legal maneuver that's presumably so that he can keep her money. Not that he thinks it's enough money, because of course for someone like him it never is enough money, is it? So yeah, these are all quite awful people, but then you have Phoenix amongst them being so noble and wonderful because he is the son of the Duke, which might be a bit much. Other thoughts before we move on to a relatively short scene again? Lynsey.
Yeah, just to say, as it goes on, I'm sort of quite favouring the autobiographical reading of this.
Yes, because it definitely makes it makes us warm to the nice characters and the situations that people are in, because it doesn't feel like it's just something schematic. But we shall see. Okay, let's shortish scene 5. Enter jeweler's wife with a boy.
Is my sweet knight coming? Are you certain he's coming?
Certain, forsooth. I'm sure I saw him out of the barber's shop window ere I would come away.
A barber's shop? Oh, he's a trim knight. Would he venture his body into a barber's shop when he knows 'tis as dangerous as a piece of Ireland? Oh, yonder he comes. Get you back again, and look you say, as I advised you.
You know me, mistress. Sorry. You know me, mistress.
My mask.
And exit boy after giving a mask.
My sweet revenue.
My pleasure. Welcome. I've got single. None but you shall accompany me to the justice of peace, my father's.
Why is thy father justice of peace, and I not know it?
My father, ye faith, sir, I. Simply though I stand here a citizen's wife, I am a justice of peace's daughter.
I love thee the better for thy birth.
Is that your lackey yonder in the stakes of velvet?
He's at thy service, my sweet revenue, for thy money paid for him.
Why then, let him run a little before, I beseech thee, for on my troth he will discover us else.
He shall obey thee. Before, sirrah, trudge.
Exit lackey. We weren't quite sure precisely when they entered.
But do you mean to lie at your father's all night?
Why should I desire your company else?
But where shall I lie then?
What an idle question's that. Why, do you think I cannot make room for you in my father's house as well as my husband's? They're both good for nothing else.
A man so resolute in valor as a woman in desire were an absolute leader.
And exit. So, we have a jeweler's wife, no name, knight, no name. Lots of people do this. Captains with no names, knights with no names.
With no names.
Have we had any reference to these characters elsewhere in the play?
Nope.
These come out of nowhere, don't they? It's not like the previous one where they set up the captain or something. We've got this. We've got a C plot, or it's what appears to be a C plot, has been introduced here. Interesting intrigue. It's an interesting counterpoint to some of the earlier scenes. Lynsey.
Yeah, just wondering if we're about to have a bed trick of some kind.
Well, we've got disguised, figures of authority figures wandering around. I wouldn't be surprised if we have a few other conventional tropes being thrown into the mix. It's that time of history. Yeah, but they're definitely hot to trot, aren't they? It's definitely, at least there's a couple here that seem to be quite happy, which is, nice, I suppose. Eric.
I just wanted to sort of flag up the joke of like, oh, he's coming into a barbershop, how trim! And it's like, yeah. And then the bit about Ireland, it's like, okay, yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting because people hardly ever mention Ireland. I mean, it really is almost a taboo subject.
But it's a good point to say, it's quite a dangerous place to be because there have been some interminable wars that have done considerable damage to an awful lot of people. So, it is a bold little throwaway line in that sense. And this play is full of little throwaway lines like that and little lines that are just sort of pop in interesting ways. There's something quite nice there. Okay. Any other thoughts? No. Okay, well, let's go to our final biggish. It's quite a big scene. We may stop midway. Scene 6. Enter 2 suitors with the Justice, I'm sure very respectable Justice Falso. Lynn, if you were first suitor, you were muted. I don't know who first suitor is. I haven't looked at my thing.
Sorry, for some reason I thought I was the second one. May it please your good worship, Master Justice.
Please me and please yourself. That's my word.
The party your worship sent for will by no means be brought to appear.
You will not? Then what would you advise me to do therein?
Only to grant your worship's warrant, which is of sufficient force to compel him.
No, by my faith, you shall not have me in that trap. I am sworn justice of the peace. You shall give my warrant to fetch a man against his will. Why, there the peace is broken. We must do all quietly. If he come, he's welcome. As far as I can see yet, he's a fool to be absent. Aye, by this gold heap, which he gave me this morning.
Why, but it may please your good worship.
I say again, please me and please yourself. That's my word still.
Sir, the world esteems it a common favour, upon the contempt of the party, the justice to grant his warrant.
Aye, 'tis so common, 'tis the worse again. 'Twere the better for me, 'twere otherwise.
I protest, sir, and this gentleman can say as much it lies upon my half undoing.
I cannot see yet that it should be so. I see not a cross yet.
I beseech your worship, show me your immediate favor and accept this small trifle, but as a remembrance to my succeeding thankfulness.
Angels, I'll not meddle with them. You give them to my wife, not to me.
Aye, sir.
But I pray ye, tell me now, did the party viva voce with his own mouth deliver that contempt that he would not appear? Or did you but jest in it?
Jest? No, my troth, sir, such was his insolent answer.
And do you think it stood with my credit to put up such an abuse? Will he not appear, says he? I'll make him appear with a vengeance. Latronello!
Enter Latronello.
Does your worship call?
Draw me a strong-limbed warrant for the gentleman speedily. He will be bountiful to thee. Go and thank him within.
I shall know your worship hereafter.
Exeunt suitors and Latronello.
I prithee do. 2 angels, 1 party, 4 another. I think it a great spark of wisdom and policy. A man come to me for justice, first to know his griefs by his fees, which be light and which be heavy. He may counterfeit else, and make me do justice for nothing. I like not that, but when I mean to be just, let me be paid well for it. The deed so rare purchase the bribe.
Enter Furtivo.
How now, what's the news? Thou come so hastily. How fares my knightly brother?
Troth, he ne'er fared worse than his life, sir. He ne'er had less stomach to his meat since I knew him.
Why, sir?
Indeed, he's dead, sir.
How, sir?
Newly deceased, I can assure your worship. The tobacco pipe new dropped out of his mouth before I took horse. A shrewd sign. I knew then there was no way but one with him. The poor pipe was the last man he took leave of in this world, who fell in 3 pieces before him and seemed to mourn inwardly, for it looked as black in the mouth as my master.
Would he die so like a politician and not once write his mind to me?
No, I'll say that for him, sir. He died in the perfect state of memory, made your worship his full and whole executor, bequeathing his daughter, and with her all his wealth, only to your disposition.
Did he make such a godly end, sayest thou? Did he die so comfortably and bequeath all to me?
Your niece is at hand, sir, the will and the witnesses.
What a precious joy and comfort this is, that a justice brother can die so well, nay, in such a good and happy memory, to make me full executor. Well, he was too honest to live, and that made him die so soon. Now, I beshrew my heart, I'm glad he's in heaven. He's left all his cares and troubles with me, and that great vexation of telling money. Yes, I hope he had so much grace to turn his white money into gold. Great ease to his executor.
See, here comes your niece, my young mistress, sir.
Enter niece and 2 gentlemen.
Ah, my sweet niece, let me kiss thee and drop a tear between thy lips. 1 tear from an old man is a great matter. The cooks of age are dry. Thou hast lost a virtuous father to gain a notable uncle.
My hopes now rest in you next under heaven.
Let 'em rest. Let 'em rest.
Sir,
You're most welcome ere ye begin, sir.
we are both led by oath and dreadful promise made to the dying man at his last sense, first to deliver these into your hands, the sureties and revealers of his state.
Good.
With this his only daughter and your niece, whose fortunes are at your disposing set. Uncle and father are in you both met.
Good, i'faith. Well spoken, gentlemen. You're not an esquire, sir?
Not, sir.
Not, sir. More's the pity, by my faith. Better men than you are, but a great many worse. You see, I've been a scholar in my time, though I'm a justice now. Niece, you're most happily come welcome. Charge of you is wholly and solely mine own, and since you are so fortunately come, niece, I'll rest a perpetual widower.
I take the meaning chaster than the words, yet I hope well of both, since it is thus his phrase offends least that's known humorous.
I make my brother, says he, full and whole executor. Honestly done of him, i' faith. Seldom can a man get such a brother. And here again, says he, very virtuously, I bequeath all to him and his disposing. Excellent fellow, on my troth. But you might all die no worse, gentlemen.
Enter Knight with Jeweller's Wife.
But as much better as might be.
Bless your uprightness, Master Justice.
You're most soberly welcome, sir. Daughter, you to that ye kneel for, rise, salute your weeping cousin.
Weeping, cousin?
They speak apart.
Aye, to weeping is very proper, and so is the party that spake it. Believe me, a pretty fine, slender, straight, delicate knit body. Oh, how it moves a pleasure through my senses. How small are women's waists to their expenses. I cannot see her face, that's under water.
News as cold to the heart as an old man's kindness. My uncle dead.
I have lost the dearest father.
If she marry by your consent, choice and liking, make her dowry 5,000 crowns. 5,000 crowns. Therefore, by my consent, she shall ne'er marry. I will neither choose for her like of it, nor consent to it.
Now, by the pleasure of my blood, a pretty cousin, I would not care if I were as near kin to her as I have been to her kinswoman.
Daughter, what gentleman might this be?
No gentleman, sir. He's a knight.
Is he but a knight? Troth, I would have sworn he'd been a gentleman to see.
He's my husband's own brother, I can tell you, sir.
My husband's brother? Speak certainly, prithee.
I can assure you, father, my husband and he have lain both in one belly.
I swear then he is his brother indeed, and by the surer side. I crave hearty pardon, sweet kinsman, that thou hast stood so long unsaluted in the way of kindred. Welcome to my board, I have a bed for thee. My daughter's husband's brother shall command keys of my chests and chambers. I have a stable for thy horse, chamber for thyself, and a loft above for thy lousy lackey. All sit, away with handkerchiefs, dry up eyes, at funeral meals cry. Now let's be wise.
Exeunt everyone but the Knight and the Jeweller's Wife.
I told you his affection.
It falls sweetly.
But here I bar you from all plots tonight. The time is yet too heavy to be light.
Why, I'm content. I'll sleep as chaste as you, and wager night by night who keeps most true.
Well, we shall see your temper.
And they exit. Now, I feel there's an interesting exposition problem here. I feel that it's like they've just thrown some characters at us, and then later on go, oh, and they're connected to him, and they're connected to them, and they're connected to them, and they're tangentially connected to the thing, and it's like it happens backwards. And I'd love to say that Middleton grows out of this tendency, but we know from a game at chess that he does exactly the same thing in 20 years' time. I mean, there is something nice about it in the sense that you get these character studies first, and you sort of are you get sort of built into them. You know, we get a very good idea who Falso is before wefting and weaving them all together. But there is also a point where you're just going, hang on, did I miss a scene? Just explaining what's going, because it all gets explained at the end, not at the beginning, and it's just because there's a lot of good stuff here, but there's also a lot of stuff going, oh, it's sort of going on this. Alan.
I must admit the way it came across to me is that the jeweller's wife is making it up on the hoof as an excuse that they can actually get accommodation. I'm not entirely convinced that her story about the relationships between a knight and her husband is actually kosher.
Oh yeah, I don't think she's real. The knight's really her brother-in-law.
No.
That joke about they've both lain in one belly.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Yeah, it's And again, because they were introduced in this separate scene earlier, but they weren't connected. It wasn't like the relationship connections weren't fully. The dots weren't joined. The niece turns up and going, "Oh, so you're..." and the niece and I see the complication that is being added to this plot, which is going to make Fidelio very unhappy, I'm sure, later on. But I'm sure will all turn out right in the end, or unless it's a tragedy in which they'll just all die horribly. It's it's doing all sorts of business. Lynn, are you waving?
Yeah, what you were saying, Rob, about like we need to know before, or it would be nice to know what the relationships are before we see these. It reminds me a little of my composition students. It's like I'm writing marginal notes. Like, what is this? What I need to know that. Why don't you say? And then like in the next paragraph, they tell me what I should have known. Like you have it all in your head as a writer, and you kind of forget that your audience is not in your head. That it'll be easier for them if they know certain things first. And instead of going, oh yeah, and by the way, these people are related in this way.
Yeah, I mean, because we get, before we get to the plot, I mean, we have all this stuff with the Suitor and Falso, and it's clearly this corrupt system of and your bribe, please, can I have your bribe, of which we have been before. If we think back to, or think ahead to, depending on where you want to put Woodstock. But there's very much that relationship between bribery and justice, and we've had that in quite a few other plays as well. It's just the only one that leapt to my mind at this moment. And it's a nice little character study. I mean, there's part of me wondering whether actually we need quite so much of Falso doing his turn. But it's like Tangle earlier. Tangle got a turn before we were introduced as to what they were doing. But with Tangle, it didn't feel like it mattered because we'd met... It was while meeting Phoenix, who we knew. So we knew that this was a character being introduced to a plot. Whereas here, because this is a C plot, though it is connected to the A and the B plot, it doesn't land very nicely. It may in performance, it may be fine. You might go with it, and the relationships will be clearer with physical people on stage. But it's just like when this Furtivo, another subtle bit of nominative determinism, turns up and just go, how fares my knightly brother? He's dead. It just turns up and just, well, I didn't know you had a brother. When did this brother turn up? What's going on? So frustrating, because there's lots of really, really nice things. It's the first sort of structural misstep that I feel the text is throwing us, because otherwise structurally it was bouncing along quite nicely prior to that. Other thoughts about where we think this Falso is going here? Because he obviously it's like I'm not going to marry her off if all this money is going to go. I've got all this potential money sitting here. What is my best option to get the potential money? And clearly he doesn't want to go to somebody else. Eric.
I feel like I missed a dirty joke somewhere, but I like with since you're so fortunately come niece all the rest the perpetual widower, and then she goes, I take the meaning chaser than the words, and I'm like, did I just miss something? What the? Okay, yeah. This is a weird exchange. Just controlling her fortune. I mean, fortune in terms of both literal fortune as in like her estates, but also the sort of fortune in terms of her fate is kind of terrifying.
Lois.
Yes, I'm trying to figure out what that means too. Does it mean that he's going to wait until she's old enough to marry and then marry her? Or does he mean that, presumably he can't really marry his own niece, so he'll stay a perpetual widow, or because she's so attractive or something? It seems to be some kind of weird compliment to her, which is, why she reacts the way she does.
Alan.
Yeah, what we seem to have had is a whole succession of character sketches, which have been nice skits in themselves as standalone, but they don't actually seem to have made much use of the plot as such, other than Phoenix all wandering around observing.
I don't think that's quite fair. I think definitely I think it's going to develop and become clearer in a moment when we go into later scenes. But they are all involving the characters in action that is going to go forward. You know, this little moment here is going to involve Fidelio because it's Fidelio's love, and similarly, the captain and is connecting to Fidelio again. Fidelio's mother. So in a sense, it's much more Fidelio-centric than it is Phoenix-based, actually, in the sense that Phoenix is just sort of learning more about the world, whereas Fidelio's going, my life is messed up. I do hope Fidelio gets more of an interior life, because so far, apart from just going, hang on, is that my father-in-law? It is. He hasn't done an awful lot. Eric.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if this is like one of those like Sir Giles Goose Cap, where like, you know, it's named after the most sort of the character that dominates the action or something something like that, but doesn't actually drive the plot in any way. I guess that like he drives the plot in that he decides, okay, I'm not going to leave like to go abroad. I'm just going to circulate around the realm and see what happens. But yeah. It's maybe we need to rename this play.
I suspect the Phoenix will do more as we go forward. I don't think it's not a blurt Master Constable kind of gig here. I think he's going to be okay. We're going to be okay. I'm not saying for certain, but it definitely feels like Phoenix has rehearsed separately his long speeches because he hasn't had that much what I'd call genuine interaction. I mean, he has had a few scenes where he's spoken to people and it has been dialogue-wise, but he does feel quite removed as a character from everybody else. It feels like there's a distance. And maybe that's just a party quirk for what Middleton's doing with the boys' company he's writing for, or whether there's another structure. We haven't had a song yet. Just to throw that out there, you know, it's a boys' company play, and we haven't had a song yet. We've had at least one, and if it's a boys' company, why doesn't it have an act structure that we can identify? I find that curious, because it did seem to be firm on that it's a boys' company play, but I will just double check my references just to make sure that is true. Because I say the text itself doesn't give us that much additional data. It's relatively stingy on entrances and exits. Yeah, no children of pools. But it doesn't really give us that much more. So yeah. Any other thoughts about the close of the play before we go into final thoughts, Lois?
I suppose just that maybe this large number of apparently superfluous characters has to do with the children's company, where I get the impression that the actors actually have to find parts for everybody. It's the opposite of the adult companies, where they're doubling like mad. In the children's companies, I think they have a lot of actors that need to be given some stage experience, and so they write in these little roles for them.
Yes, because in a sense, I mean, it's going to be we'll get a better sense of the flow of the overall play over the next couple of sessions and how many characters are needed. But we have a relatively light room this week, so which is why I sort of programmed this one. And the actual primary action is relatively tight. There aren't that many major characters. I mean, I was going to say major named characters, but as half the cast don't have names, they just have sobriquets. It is relatively light on that point. So yeah, lots of interesting questions of which we can't get answers until we finish the play. But it's setting us up, setting us up for early Middleton. You know, things that he may or may not learn and change over time. Okay, I think it's time to go into final thoughts from the play so far. I'm generally enjoying it. I have various sort of flanging tendrils around my edges, as it were, of little doubts and worries about the tone and tenor and what some of the part of the play is doing. It's quite a dark world, elements of this, and the picture that is painting for us. But it's doing all sorts of different business. It's giving us great acting parts, I think. Not subtle acting parts, I don't think. I think there's a certain lack of subtlety to it, but that's not that's not a criticism, that's just a description. But that isn't to say there isn't stuff that you can mine over time. But, I know who Falso is the moment he walks in. I know who Tangle is the moment. I have a pretty good idea who Phoenix is. Other parts are slightly more schematic, but then they also have, don't necessarily have names. So there's all sorts of edges where I'm going, lots of potential, but possible dangers as well. But I think structurally it's holding up quite well, actually, apart from some exposition issues. I think it's setting up quite a complicated series of interlocking plots, but I think they do all interlock. I mean, we may find that they all fall apart later on, and he goes off on a tangent, but I think there's enough plates spinning here. Lynn, any final thoughts from you? I'm really wittering on today. Shut me up.
Okay. It's interesting that you use the word schematic, because that word occurred to me quite early on in the courtroom scene. There's something kind of schematic about this, that we know who the characters are in 2 lines, and disguised head of state or disguised nobleman. But I don't use the word schematic in a pejorative sense. It has a sort of little matrix. The challenge for real life production is making that schema visible to the audience. Like we were saying, we find out who this jeweler's wife is. He's Fidelio's girlfriend's
cousin,
father's girlfriend's Fidelio's girlfriend's cousin. So and there's no way of knowing that beforehand. So I think the relationships are very clever, and the way the plots are intersecting is very clever. But if the audience isn't following, that's a problem.
Yeah. Sorry. Sarah, any final thoughts?
Yeah. When you were talking about Phoenix earlier, I wrote in the chat that he's more like a framing device so far, at least. It's like he's the frame. It's like, I'm going to wander around my kingdom and see what's really happening, and then lo, we have a number of scenes which I think are all going to interlock, but it's not immediately apparent how they interlock. But I think you kind of need him as that framing device, because as you say, there are so many plates spinning. You need some kind of cohesive, overarching principle to kind of keep them all in place, and I think he is it. So yeah, I mean, in that way, I think structurally it's working pretty well. I am still a little bit confused about who's related to whom and how, but I am enjoying it because I do enjoy the characterization, and I'm really hoping at some point in later on in the play there's going to be a massive face-off between Falso and Tangle. I want a really big courtroom scene where they're kind of pitched, where they're, you've got Falso who just wants the money, and then you've got Tangle who just loves getting everybody, into litigation, and those two desires meet and conflict, and we get some kind of hilarious scene. I really hope that happens. I don't know if it will or not. It does seem, I know nothing about Middleton and his personal woes, but it does. I was interested in what people were saying about this being perhaps autobiographical, because it's almost like he wanted to write some sort of satire based on his own nefarious experiences of the law and his family. It's almost like he felt the need to get it out of his system, and he sort of picked I'm going to write a comedy, assuming it is a comedy. I have a feeling it's going to be a comedy. I can't imagine everyone's going to end up slaughtered. It would be kind of funny if they did, but I have a feeling this is going to be a comedy. It's like he's chosen a sort of traditional comedy structure to write something that isn't really a comedy. So he's wanted to get all these digs at the law in, but then it's like, we also need people who are in love, lovers separated, and nefarious old uncle, and okay, we'll tie it all in somehow. It's like he's just used this as like a coat hanger to hang off the things that he really wants to write about. And I'm actually finding that quite interesting. Slightly confusing, but I'm interested to see how it unfolds.
Eric, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know. It's like sort of the start of something, but then you don't quite know where it's going to go. Aside from, I don't know. There's a part of me going, I can see what Night of the Burning Pestle was based on, except like that was funnier because obviously it was making fun of all the plays before it and just ridiculously outrageous. Whereas this is kind of, it looks like he's trying to make a point, but I don't know if he is making a point or not yet.
Greg, any final thoughts?
Ooh, interesting one. Yes, I'm lost. I think this would be the point where I'd be begging the theatre, if any theatre actually did it, to please put not a family tree, but some sort of schematic in the programme telling you who's who and who's related to who and lines where there's no family relationships, because this is just, to me, a mess at the moment.
Well, I think it's actually, you could remove some of the familial relationships. I don't think you need all of them. It's like, when Falso is talking about his his brother's dead and things like this. Does that need? How many of these connections matter? It might be later on we find that some of them will, and that I'm overreaching here. But I feel that actually, it's just loaded on a few too many complications that I don't know if will reward dramatic fruit. And you can actually just fill it a few lines here and there, and it will just be a lot clearer because it's just the niece is doing this and this is they're connected to Fidelio, and that it might be all much more straightforward. And we may find that. Eric.
I was just going to say, yeah, I think maybe a modern audience would not modern for us, not modern for the time, early modern, anyway, would kind of find it like coincidental is just too much sometimes, sort of enough to get a groan in the audience. But I don't know, maybe that's just like me.
I mean, in a sense that it's not like we're grappling with coincidence. These are people who are connected, who have a stake in the situation that's going on. It's not like they're entirely disassociated. But it might just be to say that it's just an expositional tidy up, and once you've established who the characters are, it'll run along happily. It's just a bit clumsily sent to us. Lois, any final thoughts?
Yeah, it's taking a while to get going, but I think that's because in a way Tangle's name sort of sums it up. I mean, I think this is meant to be an almost incomprehensible tangle of relationships and lawsuits and so on, and then we're going to see how he can disentangle them. I mean, that notion which you get very strongly in Johnson about a classical structure with a tying a knot and then the denouement, which is the untying at the end, that may be sort of what he's working on. We're not really sure about dates here, but it's possible. I think people think that this may have been the first of what they usually refer to as the disguised duke plays, in which a ruler disguises himself and sort of gets a sense of what his country is like, or his community, by moving among them. And if so, it's quite interesting you can trace a very interesting sort of lineage through a lot of other plays, which we will presumably be reading later.
Well, we sort of read them and we later, but they're potentially forward. It's one of those sort of awkward things of they all potentially all happen at about the same time. But It's like we've looked at the malcontent, which is potentially right on top of this one, and various other texts that temporarily may or may not be before or after this, and of which we have read either in the distant past or we've just forgotten.
Well, they kind of culminate in something like Bartholomew's Fair, in which Justice Overdue goes around in disguise and makes a complete mess of everything. I mean, he's trying to do what the characters in these plays do, but he's not getting it right.
So we've got all sorts of interesting tangles. And also I think just in terms of when talking about how long it's taking to get there, remember we've actually done very little text today, and it's one of the shorter sessions that we've, in terms of the amount of words we've done, by a few hundred to 1,000 words. That we've got more room for manoeuvre to discuss this one than some other plays of late, where I've really forced the pace, and so it may feel longer than, in fact, in practical stage terms, it is. I mean, it's not short, but it's not an excessively long text. This one, much to my earnest relief. Give it a couple of weeks, you'll be begging for a play as short as this one again. Alan, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, so far we've had some very nice character sketches, as I said before, and it will be interesting to see how they actually do pull together into some sort of plot, which is yet to be determined. But I mean, you could take out that Tangle sequence so far. That would be a nice little standalone one-man show, virtually, with a couple of feed people, and also the courtroom scene with Falso. Again, could be almost a standalone sketch.
But are, important plot drivers. The Tangle is all about setting up for what's going to be happening with.
You're speaking with prior knowledge, having read the plot.
No, I'm talking about what literally happened in the scene. He came on and said, "I am now on the court case for your mother," which is set up for Fidelio, and here this is a court case about his intended love. I mean, we've got two plot lines very clearly setting up for later in the play. I don't know where the plot lines are going. I just know from this, we've had about 4 scenes of length and 2 adjunct scenes, and in 4 scenes we've set up 3 plot lines that are quite clearly identified and laid out. That they feel individual and have big character studies doesn't remove that there is plot going on here, and it's clearly quite well setting that plot up. It's not necessarily setting up some of the exposition of who's driving the plot and why they're doing it. There's an awful lot of why is this happening stuff that I feel is not really being explicated very well. Those last 2 scenes that we've done do not set up the niece situation. That could have been set up in a much more tidy way by focusing on the character we've already met, the niece. First off, that's what those scenes need to tell an audience what's going on. Lynsey.
Yes, I don't really think I have anything to add to what has already been said about this, other than I think, like lots of us, I am quite enjoying it, even though it seems, to have these structural question marks and, need of family trees and who's related to whom and who would like to be related to whom in which particular way and all that kind of thing. But it's sort of so far, I think, quite promising. So I look forward to returning to it next time.
Yes. We've been around the room once, but if anyone's got any additional thoughts to pile onto the thoughts, then wave now or forever hold your peace. Or hold on till next time and throw it in then, because we've got 2 more sessions on this to play around and dance around and see where we go with this. Yes, all that remains to thank all the wonderful readers for all their wonderful reading. Thank you very much, everyone, and goodbye. Tricks, delays, money laws.